Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at another submission by our friends from Sweden, Tytti with her horse Usko. Now, she writes to me that she's had some soundness problems with the horse, and as you can see, he has a bandage on his right hind fetlock back there. In Sweden, because of the cold and the ice that they have to be on during the wintertime, they have to keep studs on the horses all the time to keep them from falling down. Which of course can be very difficult on horses, and if they step on themselves, they thought that the lameness problem was a problem of that it had stepped on itself with the calks on its feet, and that was causing the problem. So this is an interesting video to watch, to start educating your eyes about lamenesses. Very often, we think of the foot first, but there are many other places where lamenesses can be that emanate, somewhere above the foot. Of course, the foot is where we start, and we work our way up. If you've ever worked with a veterinarian doing a block-out exam where they block the leg, starting with the foot and going up till they find where the problem is. And that would have caused, like for instance with this horse, if you had blocked its feet, she probably would have found there was nothing there, because she ultimately finds what the problem is. Now, I'm not going to tell you here because I want you to examine the horse yourself and think about where it might be unsound as you watch the tape and you watch it moving. And you watch where it unloads, as we talk about. In other words, if the horse on the front leg, watch when it lifts its head up, which tells you that it's relieving the pressure on that side, on that foreleg, if that's what it is. Of course, it can be a hind leg, and that's very different. One thing I'd like to note while we're here looking at this horse, compared to the earlier videos that we saw, we can see that he's really starting to take shape over his top line. He's really stretching. He's doing everything wonderfully. He just needs to do more of it. And I'm sure he will soon. Now, of course, here you can clearly see that he's unsound here. Now, once again, I'd ask you to take a look at which foot is he unloading, so to speak, and see what you think about that. In other words, which footfall does he raise his head up at, which would be to relieve the pressure on that foot. And ultimately, you'll see where she finds the problem. Looking at the footing here, just something I wanted to talk about a little bit is, they're in Sweden there, and obviously it's very cold a lot of the year there. But look how flat, even though it's quite hard, it looks like the surface they're on, it's quite flat. And really that is more important to the soundness of horses than any other single thing. Yes, we'd like to always work in a really nice soft ring, with perfect footing, but we can't always do that. But the most important thing is that footing be consistent. So that is, if it's all hard, it's fine. The horse will learn to deal with it. If it's all soft, it's fine. The horse will learn to deal with it. But it's soft in places and hard in other places. That's where you get into big trouble with horses, and because you get them moving on one level and they feel comfortable, and all of a sudden they hit a hole. So what you're looking for is a consistent surface. And this looks pretty good for that. They're dealing with what they have to deal with, which is a lot of cold weather, it looks like, and snow. So once again, we're back in the walk here with this horse. And examine once again when he lifts his head up. Now she does some palpitations, and she's going to find out what actually is wrong with the horse. I'll let you watch her for a moment. Look how she's going into the muscles there. Feeling all along, which is an easy thing to do and what certainly everyone should do. Back in days of old, people used to spend a lot more time grooming horses and really getting into them with brushes and things. Here in California, too often, we spend our time, just bathing horses with water, and they really miss that deep massage. It's really good for the muscles. So don't be lazy in your grooming. Get in with your horses and you find out where, get your hands on them, give them a massage, go over them with a curry comb and really get into them. And find out where the sore spots are. That's essentially what she's doing here. So by grooming a horse, you really get to, feel them all over and make contact with them physically. It has a lot to do with developing a relationship with them. I certainly believe that all beginning students should be grooming their own horses as part of the training that they do, because it's so important just to learn a horse sense, and being around horses is very important to learning how to ride them. And too often these days we see beginners who really have almost no contact with their horses. They come out and the trainers have them all tacked up for them, and in many cases that we've known of, they were even unaware that their own horses were being drugged, and that they didn't know it, and if they were never around the horse enough, handling them, you'll never get that kind of perspective on the horse. So you need to know what the horse is like all the time. So I highly recommend, if you're just starting out, to get your hands on your horses especially, and learn how to groom and learn how to go over them. For all of you who haven't done that in a while, this is something you should all be doing. And you see how she's going over the whole horse, just feeling for spots. Think about it, when you get a massage, what your masseuse does. They just get in, they feel, oh, and, they respond when they feel you tighten up, they know they've found the spot. Well, same thing is true of horses. If you get your hands on them, they'll quickly find. We're amazed very often, like with saddles, how people are so completely unaware that the horse's back is sore. They don't even realize it. And you put your hand up there and you can practically flatten the horses down on the ground, and people go, oh, geez, got a sore back. Well, so you want to get your hands on and know those kind of things. If you give a horse a good grooming and brush and curry them correctly, you'll get into all those spots and you'll find out where she's sore. So once again, she's gone over the whole horse, and she's going to go over on the other side, which is where he looked off. Remember, he was unloading on this right front leg, but yet there's nothing wrong with his foot. So she's going down those long muscles and finding where he may be tight. And once again, horses, how they do these things, is at best conjecture, but just like you and I, very often we get up in the morning and, wow, we've done something, we've laid on something wrong in the night, and we've got a crick in our neck or a shoulder out or something like that. And, horses are the same way, so, of course, you always want to find out, you go in your stall if the horse is injured and be sure there isn't anything to injure them, and be sure you bed your stalls correctly so the horses can lay down without getting cast, these sort of things, because that often leads to a lot of problems with horses in stalls. It's just getting cast, and then they get themselves up against the wall, and they pull shoulders and legs, and you name it. So you can see she's found her spot now. And while initially they were looking at the horse's feet, what they found is it's the horse's shoulders. And we see this all the time, once again, with saddles. People thinking that the horses are lame, and then you put a different saddle on their fit. So once again, this is Will Faerber from Archer Ride. Hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for sending it in.